vehicle, you've already done this, but we have lots of good apps actually that will show you where electric vehicle charging stations are located in your neighborhood. Here's one in New York where I live, and when they're accessible, some of them have ways you can make reservations to get charges. And we are in the early stages, I believe, of developing an infrastructure and an ecosystem around electric vehicle charging. For a number of reasons, it's going to be different than internal combustion engines and gasoline cars, mainly because the charging takes longer. It's a very interesting set of business relationships that are being developed here. When I was at the Department of Energy, we launched a program called EV Everywhere, and in particular, we focused here on building up infrastructure in office and home, office and workplaces, because in the United States, at least, people want to charge where they park, and they tend to park both at home and in the office. And so we worked with employers to try to build up a network of charging stations at people's offices. And here's President Obama in one of the events that was related to this. Levi Tilleman, who's going to speak after me, was very involved in our work on this and did a great job. And Levi, we talked about this, but Levi helped to develop a program called the eGallon, which showed you how much it costs to drive on a mile in an electric car as compared to driving a mile on a gallon of gasoline. So that's a short discussion of the infrastructure. Let me talk about the policy landscape in each of the countries. And let me start with the United States. And there's lots of policies. Let me just hit on some that I think are the most important. And I have the American flag, and for those who don't recognize it, that's the US Capitol, where federal policy is made. And then I have the state of California, because so much is happening in the state of California on this. So first we have a tax credit for the purchase of electric vehicles in the United States. The tax credit depends upon the size of the battery. The maximum dollar amount available is $7,500. You don't get this when you purchase the car, but you get it as a credit on your annual income tax. There's also credits that are available for the purchase of charging equipment as well. But the most important is the federal tax credit for the purchase of electric vehicles. It phases out for any given manufacturer after that manufacturer has reached 200,000 units sold. So that's our federal tax credit, which is an important policy. We have lots of state tax credits, rebates, and exemptions. So credits, just like you can take a credit off your state taxes in some places. Rebates, you get paid directly for the purchase of an electric vehicle, and an exemption is a sales tax exemption. Here's a chart that shows some of these policies as of March 2015. You see tax credits are in Colorado, Georgia, Louisiana, Maryland, South Carolina, Utah, and West Virginia. Rebates, I won't read through all of these, but we have numbers of states with rebates, number of states with sales tax exemptions, numbers with fee exemptions, and then some states actually offer loans and grants to support the purchase of electric vehicles. So state policies are very important here. The ZEV program, Zero Emission Vehicle Program in California, has been a very important policy driving electric vehicle adoption. The ZEV program requires auto manufacturers to manufacture and sell zero emissions vehicles. If a manufacturer does not do that, it can, subject to some limitations, buy credits from other manufacturers that have exceeded their requirement. It's a form of cap and trade program. Tesla, this has been a very important program for Tesla and for some other manufacturers. It has really been an important driver of EV policy in the United States. High occupancy vehicle lanes have also been very important. A number of states around the country, including California, I understand it, Virginia, the DC area, provide access to high occupancy vehicle lanes for any plug-in vehicle. And that matters a lot to anybody who wants to move through traffic. President Obama announced within the past couple of months a new focusing of our federal loan guarantee program on electric vehicles, and has made it clear that federal loan guarantees will be available for those who want to manufacture or distribute electric vehicles in this area. And it's an exciting program that offers to reduce the cost of capital in this area. And then I've already discussed the EV Everywhere Workplace Charging Program, which the Department of Energy operates to assist employers in workplace charging. A couple of challenges that are on the horizon with electric vehicles in the United States. First are dealer laws, and this is really mainly an issue for Tesla, but I think it's worth noting. In the United States, we have laws that prohibit manufacturers from selling directly to consumers in many states, most states, and require the maintenance of dealerships in order to sell vehicles directly to customers. Tesla does not want to do that. Tesla wants to sell its vehicles directly to its customers without going through dealers. And numbers of states have prohibited Tesla from doing that. And Tesla's in very active debates, discussions, maybe even litigation with some states over this issue about the right to sell their vehicles directly to consumers. And then another issue that's more on the horizon, but I think is worth paying attention to for anybody who's interested in electric vehicle policy, are road maintenance charges and gas tax laws. In the United States, we principally fund the maintenance and improvement of our roads through gasoline taxes. And in a number of places around the country, some people are saying, hold it, if we have lots of electric vehicles on the road, they won't be paying their fair share for maintaining the cost of those roads, and urging that we change our policy so that the drivers of electric vehicles pay something for the maintenance of roads. And there's a debate going on about that. I think so far it's not a very live debate in most places, but in some ways it's similar to the debate around solar net metering. As long as electric vehicles are a tiny percentage of the overall vehicle fleet, this won't be a big issue, and there won't be a big force to try to change these laws. But just like as solar grew, we can talk about this later, people are interested. As solar power grew, the solar net metering laws became more controversial, and there were efforts to roll them back. I think as electric vehicle penetration grows, there will be pressure to change the way that road maintenance is funded in the United States, and pressure to have electric vehicles pay a portion of the cost. Let's talk some about Chinese policies. I found this very comprehensive slide from CATARC, the China Automotive Technology and Research Center policy, in just listing many different policies that China has for electric vehicles. It's more than we could go through as I stand here. So let me just pull out what I've understood to be some of the most important Chinese policies on electric vehicles, and then our Chinese discussants can elaborate on this in more detail. First, we have the new energy vehicle industry development plans, and I think it's worth emphasizing that new energy vehicles are addressed in the 13th Five-Year Plan, that there are a number of plans to promote new energy vehicles, including in particular electric vehicles. They're elaborated in more detail on this slide. But this in particular is an interesting contrast for those of us from the United States, because the United States in general doesn't do planning in the same way. And the Chinese government has identified this as a strategic priority, and a number of policies follow from that. But just the fact that new energy vehicles have been identified as a priority in the 13th Five-Year Plan and elsewhere is extremely important in the Chinese context. There are purchase subsidies, important purchase subsidies, both at the central government and the provincial government level. They, as I understand it, are roughly the $7,000 range now from the central government. Those are declining. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then a wide range of provincial subsidies, so that in some places, subsidies, as I understand it, are roughly $15,000 for the purchase of an electric vehicle. License plate preference is an important one. The opportunity to get license plates for an electric vehicle when they are not available for internal combustion engine, or when in Beijing, somebody told me recently that it takes 3 years to get your license plate if you're buying a typical car, and you can get one immediately for an electric vehicle. Manufacturer support, there have been a range of subsidies, both from in particular from provincial governments for manufacturers. And then infrastructure development plans. I talked about this earlier, but there's now state council guidance, and State Grid is working to develop the charging network, which is going to be an extremely important feature of any electric vehicle build out in China. Here's a graph that I put together with my graduate students on EV subsidies and the policies as we understand them. They are declining over time, and here's a schedule that we were able to identify. And they're declining, as I understand it, in part because the quality of the batteries is improving, and there's a perceived perception that the need for the subsidies is declining. There have been a number of developments in the news on Chinese electric vehicle policy in just the past month. First, and I have these from English language newspapers, not from the Chinese language newspapers, but 5 automakers were fined for subsidy fraud. And there's an effort underway in that, which some people here are very familiar with. This is actually an old development, but it's been highlighted to me as important. In 2012, really at the dawn of the electric vehicle age in China, early in the deployment of electric vehicles, there was a very high-profile crash in Shenzhen, in which an electric vehicle, although the driver was not at fault, the electric vehicle crashed into flames, and apparently it got lots of attention and spurred fears about the safety impacts of electric vehicles, which I've been told by a number of people remain an important feature of in China today. And then recent news just in the past couple of weeks about the central government's possible move to reduce the total number of electric vehicle companies in China, with all these companies a desire to limit the number of manufacturers to really the best by stricter technology standards and reducing the total number of permits in this area. So let me talk about my last topic, which is U.S.-China cooperation. Here, I think somebody showed this slide yesterday, but here's President Barack Obama and President Hu Jintao in 2009. It's the first summit between President Obama and the U.S. And the Chinese leader. And at that summit, there were a number of clean energy agreements that were adopted, including the China Clean Energy Research Center and an agreement to work together on electric vehicles. We talked some about the Clean Energy Research Center yesterday. Here's the logo of the Clean Energy Research Center, and this is one of my favorite slides for U.S.-China cooperation. If anybody knows of a slide in which 2 American diplomats and 2 Chinese diplomats are together and are happier, please let me know. I guess I should say government officials, they're not diplomats. This on the left, you'll recognize Steve Chu, who was here yesterday on the left. Then that's State Councilor Liu Yadong, Ambassador Gary Locke, and Minister of Science and Technology Wang Gang. And now, by coincidence here, I think it's coincidence, the 2 American government officials are both of Chinese heritage. I know both of them personally. Neither one of them speaks any Putonghua, but they are both of Chinese heritage. And this was a very joyous moment, as this photograph records. And we worked very hard to get the CERC, that's the Clean Energy Research Center, we worked very hard to negotiate that protocol. And this is a celebration of that moment. The Secretary Chu yesterday asked me to, I showed him the slide, he asked me to send it to him so he can use this slide. Here is a meeting in 2011 of the Clean Vehicles Consortium within the Clean Energy Research Center, which continues and is doing important work and has hundreds and hundreds of researchers involved. And here's another one. When I arrived at the Department of Energy in 2009, after President Obama was elected, and within my first month or 2 there, my staff asked me if I would lead the U.S. delegation to a long-standing institution called the U.S.-China Oil and Gas Industry Forum. That U.S.-China Oil and Gas Industry Forum had been in existence for about 10 years, maybe more. And I said I would be very happy to do that, but if I was going to do that, I would also like to lead the U.S. delegation to the first U.S.-China Electric Vehicle Forum, because I believe that electric vehicles are the future, and I wanted to look to the future. And so we established the first US-China Electric Vehicle Forum, and I was privileged to lead the delegation. Minister Wang Gang led the delegation on the Chinese side. And there have been regular meetings since then. And here's just one outgrowth of that. There was a meeting in the last few years, the US-China Workshop on Electric Vehicle Technology and Standardization. There's very important work that our two countries can continue to do together, bringing experts together to work on technology issues related to electric vehicles. And I think it's important that we continue to do that. So let me end where I started, with the existence proof of the extraordinary ability to make great change in this world. Many people say that electric vehicles are growing slowly. I believe electric vehicles are going to be a dominant force in the transport sector in the 21st century, and we have seen the ability of this world to make great changes. Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. David Sandlow, for a great speech on US-China cooperation in electric vehicles. Then we are going to have time for the Q&A during the panel discussion, so you guys feel free to ask them questions. And then during David Sandlow's speech, it does remind me of the air pollution issues that arise in China right now. And then it's remind me that Los Angeles, after the Los Angeles air pollution issue, it takes about 40 years for the U.S. to establish the actions to combat with air pollution, as the U.S. government has established EPA until in 1970s to combat because of the air pollution issue. So going on, I'm going to introduce another set of great speakers, beginning with Ashley Howard, who is Vice President of PlugShare, working on the electric vehicle infrastructure. And prior to that, Mr. Ashley served on the nation's first ever public sector Chief EV Officer, maybe CEO. She was one of the main authors of the multi-state ZEV action plan, and she was also the West Coast Electric Highway Manager at Oregon State Department of Transportation. And to save time, I'll just welcome Ashley Howard for the introduction of the panel, and then she will give a speech as well.
Thank you, Chen. I'm honored to be here. I heard this was the second year that you all have come together for such an important discussion. So I appreciate that, and I have to admit, a little bit lower. Yes. Vertically challenged here. So yes, thank you again for welcoming me into the fold here to have this important discussion. I think we've got quite a bit of talent in our panel, and I'm looking forward to a really great discussion. And I have to admit that my notes are probably just overflowing to the point where we're going to have to distill quite a bit of information and learn as much as we can today. So without further ado, I will be doing a presentation on my work in the United States later on, but I'm going to go ahead and give the floor to our first speaker, the CEO of Beijing Electric Vehicle Company, Gang Zhang, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about his work and leadership in his country, and find out what we can learn in the United States from you, as well as sharing ideas from the United States. So I think this meeting represents a really unique opportunity to sort of look at two different markets that are at different stages, and two different countries that have maybe made some mistakes and have some opportunities to craft better strategies on electric vehicles, and accelerating EV adoption, and really being critical of the way that we maybe have done to this point, but also being really thoughtful about better ways that we can approach an issue that we all are very in depth in research together. So we'll analyze those strategies and sort of learn from each other, and without further ado, I will introduce Don Juan, and I'd like him to just maybe say a few words about his work, and then we'll get further into that as his speech continues.